Dead Rising 3 on the Xbox One. Hearing mixed messages on this one. First of all, Dead Rising 3's developer has been praising the Xbox One's sheer memory and horsepower. Sheer memory and horsepower. Praising sheer memory and horsepower. Remember that. Mike Jones, who's the producer of Dead Rising 3, has been quoted saying, "Working with the Xbox One has been amazing. The game is not only exponentially larger than Dead Rising 1 and 2 combined, but we have been able to maintain the same destiny we had that Dead Rising is known for. The number of weapons, the number of physics objects, the number of zombies, what we have been able to do with Smart Glass and Kinect, the sheer memory and the horsepower of the Xbox One, which helped turning Dead Rising 3 into fully streaming huge open world zombie sandbox." Really? Really, Mr. Mike Jones, really? Because we're going to get on to another point here in a minute. Don't get me wrong. Dead Rising, I think it'll be a great game. It looked impressive, but a lot of demos that I've seen running at E3 and Gamescom, they have been struggling with the performance of it. Fair enough, these are demos, they might be a couple of weeks old now, but ooh, it's looking a bit iffy. Now that quite neatly brings me on to this point. Apparently, Capcom have been working closely with Microsoft to improve the performance of Dead Rising in time for launch. And get this, the development team are targeting a solid 30 frames per second. 30 frames per second on this so-called next-gen console. First of all, I was under the impression that 1080p 60 frames per second was the target. Now, I would eat my left testicle if this game isn't running at 720p and it's struggling to hit that 30 frames per second. Like I said, the demos of this game run at Gamescom and whatever. People have got a few questions over the performance of it because it's been quite choppy to say the least. Now, Jason Lee, who's a senior producer, has come out saying, "This demo is actually several weeks old and we've made a lot of ground. We've got a little bit more ways to go before we release the game." Well, yeah, not really, it's not that far off from launch. Now the demos that have been running at E3 and Gamescom, like I said, have been really struggling. They've been massively struggling to hit a solid frame rate, so you see no jerkiness, etc. But apparently what's been happening so far with these demos is the frame rate has been dropping below 30 frames per second, consistently well below 30 frames per second, especially when there's a lot of things going on the screen, a lot of zombies. Now we've all seen the demos running at E3, etc., where it all looked lovely, but those piles and piles of zombies on the screen are obviously taking a performance hit. Jason Lee then went on to say, "We're targeting 30 frames a second, and because we're based in Vancouver and Seattle is where Microsoft is based, we're only 3 hours up the road, so we constantly have tech people driving back and forth, and they're helping us to make this a very smooth running game at launch." I'm hoping this game's going to be decent at launch. I really do. It has to be. They can't have a next gen game coming out and it's struggling to hit 30 frames per second. It's most probably being rendered at 720p and being upscaled to 1080p. It'll certainly be interesting to see if Capcom manage to get things working, managing to tweak things a little bit and see if they can get this constant 30 frames per second that they're striving to reach. So remember, Xbox One's sheer memory and horsepower, but they're struggling to hit 30 frames per second. Don't get me wrong, I doubt it would be much of a story with PS4. I'm not saying this is a Xbox One issue, it's more of a Dead Rising issue, because the two machines are very similar. But we need to surely be hitting at least 30 frames per second as a bare minimum. Bare minimum. As always guys, thank you very much for listening. Please hit the like button if you like what you hear. Love to hear your comments on this down below in the commento section. And if you're new to the channel, press the subscribe button. Please come back for future content. And as always guys, until next time.